Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. From celebrating Newt Rockne to the fall of USC, the Down and Distance podcast, hosted by Ivan Mizell, covers 8 stories from the history of college football. Download today, available wherever you enjoy your podcast. Presented by Centus and LinkedIn. Also, protect your engine this winter. Use Pennzoil Synthetic Motor Oil, made from natural gas, not crude oil. On the line with us right now, as promised, is the voice of Monday Night Football, working alongside my buddy Joe Tessitore every Monday night during the NFL season, Monday Night Football. The one and only Booger McFarland is on the phone with us as we speak live tonight. East Rutherford, New Jersey, no doubt about it. The New York Giants get set to host the Dallas Cowboys. What's going on, Booger? How are you, man?
I'm doing good, Stephen A. How you doing, buddy?
You didn't have to go online to read these stories. You're in the New York area, so you see it. There's in the newspaper live that doesn't have this story. I'm reading from the New York Post, Steve Serby's column. Gase's terrible effort blows up a dead season. And essentially, Adam Gase, being asked about how embarrassing it is. He said, this is the NFL. You can't be embarrassed by this bleep. I don't understand how he can't be. This is a situation going nowhere fast. Your thoughts about what you saw from the Jets yesterday, losing to the winless and hapless Miami Dolphins 26-18 in Miami?
Well, I think what you're seeing right now is a team that's making too many mistakes, and it's mostly on the offensive side of the football. Sam Darnold, ever since the Monday night game where he said he was seeing ghosts, he kind of hasn't been the same. He had a really good performance against the Cowboys and beat them. But since then, man, the teams are blitzing him. He's panicking in the pocket, and the head coach doesn't seem to have a solution for the quarterback. When you're a young player, the coaching is important. Just look at Jared Goff. Jared Goff, we were all thinking watching Hard Knocks that Jared Goff couldn't play. In comes Sean McVay. And now we're mentioning Jared Goff in the MVP conversation, and he took the Rams to the Super Bowl. So coaching matters. And so Sam Darnold is out there right now playing lost because the play caller, the offensive guru, Adam Gase, is not giving him any answers right now. And I think that's the most disappointing thing.
When I look at Adam Gase, I need you to explain something to me that's very, very difficult for me to comprehend. I'm trying to understand how a man who did a relatively subpar job in Miami gets the New York head coaching job with the New York Jets. How does this man ultimately garner up the cachet to get rid of a GM and bring in his own? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Can you try to make sense of that for me, please?
Well, I think you have to start at the top. If you look at the ownership, Woody, Woody is now overseas doing his thing, and Christopher Johnson is running the team. And when you bring a head coach in, and you're basically, whether on paper or in a meeting with the GM, you give that head coach full control over everything. Now he has the power. So he not only can run the football team from an X and O standpoint, he also can get his guy to control personnel. And I think when you look at McCagnon, whether it was Adam Gase directly or a combination of him with the Johnson family, they didn't want Mike McCagnon because they felt like that he wasn't on their team, so to speak. So they go out, you get Joe Douglas, and now Joe is in there. But I think the overarching point is, how are you letting a coach who hasn't earned that cachet to be able to pick and choose his own GM? I think is the bigger question, and ultimately it's one that the Johnson family has to answer.
Booger McFarland right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let's get to the game of games that took place this past Sunday night. Last night, the New England Patriots went on the road to visit the Baltimore Ravens and got pretty beat up. Lamar Jackson was absolutely sensational, but that defense wasn't too bad itself. And for the first time, some people said, you know what, first time in many, many years, many, many ions ago, people were talking about how confused Tom Brady looked. What did the Baltimore Ravens do in your mind that stood out last night, leading to them being victorious over the New England Patriots?
Well, I think first and foremost, they understand how to play the Patriots. They've played them for a long time. Even if you go back when Ed Reed and Ray Lewis and that whole crew was there, they've played against Tom Brady for a long time. And defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, he understands how to play Josh McDaniels, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the biggest thing they did was, Stephen, this group has a confidence now that's I mean, you can see it coming through the TV screen, and that's all coming from Lamar Jackson. He is playing at an MVP level. He's making it tough on defenses. He's changing the way that teams play the Baltimore Ravens, and he's doing an outstanding job of that, not only as a runner, but also as a passer. He made some really, really good throws. And I think right now his maturation from the guy we saw against the Los Angeles Chargers who couldn't complete a pass in the playoffs to where he is now, I think you got to give him a lot of credit. And he's making a lot of people believers, myself included, because I was not a believer. But I think if you look at the growth that he's made as a quarterback in and out of the pocket, I'm truly amazed and also truly happy for the young man, because he set out years ago saying he told his mom, I want to be a quarterback. And when schools didn't recruit him to play quarterback, he didn't look at those schools. And so you got to give him a lot of credit for his conviction, not just now, but going all the way back before he went to the University of Louisville.
Boogie McFarland, when you look at Lamar Jackson today, tell me what do you see that's so different from what we saw last season, and in particular when he went against the Chargers in the postseason?
Stephen, I think it's confidence. It's amazing what having a game plan and repetitions in that game plan and confidence that someone is building a game plan around you will do for you. And I think when you watch him play, we often hear about the game slowing down for quarterbacks. I think you can break that down in the layman's terms that you're more comfortable doing your job. So now your job all of a sudden almost becomes like a hobby, because it's so fun, because you're not overthinking. You're not, you don't have 10 or 15 things going through your head. All you're thinking about is, here's the play. I know exactly what I have to do, and here's how I have to react. And you go back to that game against the Chargers, it wasn't that way. I mean, we were all like, man, this guy only completed, 3 or 4 passes through however many quarters it was. And then you look at to where he is now, like, it's unreal. And you got to give him, you got to give John Harbaugh, you got to give Greg Roman, all the people that have poured the time, the effort, and the organization to change a lot of what they do, getting the tight ends, committing to the running game, being a physical football team around him. You got to give them a lot of credit. But I just think it comes down to confidence and his ability to work at it in the offseason. There's really no secret to how Peyton Manning became Peyton Manning, how he went from 28 interceptions to a 4-time or 5-time MVP. I mean, he's won it so many times, I can't remember. It's the work in the offseason where you hone your craft, where you take a day or a week and you just work on one thing. Peyton would take an entire day and work on a ball fake. Think about that. A ball fake. He would work 6 hours on a ball fake, but that's how you perfect it. And I think Lamar Jackson has done a lot of work in the offseason, perfecting his craft, not only as a runner, because we already knew he had that, but as a passer. So it's been amazing to watch, and he is clearly right in the MVP conversation. I would lean a little bit toward Russell Wilson right now, because I think we've underappreciated Russell Wilson for a long, long time.
Right.
Deshaun Watson is doing it at a high level. Patrick Mahomes, although he's missed the last 2 games, we'll see where he is when he comes back. And then Christian McCaffrey, he's on pace to have a record-setting year with yards from scrimmage.
We'll give him a follow right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Tell me what you saw from the Patriots, though, because the way they looked offensively, the way Tom Brady looked confused and what have you, Bill Belichick seemed to have a level of urgency to his coaching demeanor when you consider what was transpiring early in the game and they were down 14-0. What about all of that? Talk to me about that for a second.
Well, the Patriots have a formula of how they win. They're going to out-execute you. They're going to make very, very few mistakes, because they realize this. Stephen, more games in the NFL are lost than won. And last night, I think if you would ask the Patriots, they lost the game. The fumble, return for a touchdown, that's a mistake. Offsides, where the Baltimore Ravens were about to kick a field goal and gave them a first down, and that turned into a touchdown. So I just think when you look at the mistakes, and this is taking nothing away from the Ravens, because if you ask the Ravens, they caused those mistakes. I'm just giving you the perspective of the Patriots. If you ask the Patriots, they lost the game by mistakes that they made, and they typically don't make those mistakes. And so I think, for Bill Belichick, for this team to have one loss midway through the season, still so much room to grow, and now you can go back and you can teach off of that. I think somewhere inside of Bill Belichick, he's not too concerned about last night.
Booger McFarland, let's transition to a couple of other games that we saw. Kansas City surviving without Patrick Mahomes and beating the Minnesota Vikings. We know what Kansas City's expected, what's expected of them once Patrick Mahomes comes back, which is probably next week. What about these Minnesota Vikings in the NFC North? Even though Green Bay lost, Chicago lost, Minnesota still lost this game. We see how they're struggling. What are your thoughts about that? What transpired with them against Kansas City yesterday?
I think that was a tough loss for Minnesota because they came in. And, when you go against Kansas City, everybody wants to try to run the football. Like, that's been their Achilles heel, stopping the run. But they tried it, and then they had limited success. But I was more concerned about Minnesota's defense. You're going against a backup quarterback. I mean, Matt Moore, a few weeks ago, he was teaching at school, I think. I mean, he wasn't even concerned with football. So now you take a guy off the couch who comes out and basically shreds you. And I realize he's no rookie. He's been around this league a while, even though he wasn't playing. But he didn't go through all the rigors of preparation. He was at school teaching. And now all of a sudden, he's out there against a Mike Zimmer defense that I know is very prideful. I think that was the biggest issue. Minnesota, Kirk Cousins is who he is. Like, he's going to be hot and cold. He's been pretty much hot over the last month, but I think we've seen times also where he can just go ice cold. And so I think the issue for Minnesota is that they have to have something they can hang their hat on, and I think that's going to be that defense. And yesterday I think the defense let them down a little bit.
Booger McFarland right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News, working on a Monday Night Football game tonight. The New York Giants host the Dallas Cowboys. Speaking of the New York Giants, where do you view them as being at right now? Because I'm looking at Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley is back in the lineup, but I'm not looking at them having pretty much else to be enthused about. And even Daniel Jones, that's really because he's not Eli Manning. What are you making of the Giants? How much of a must-win is this for the Cowboys tonight going up against the Giants?
Well, is it a must-win? I don't think any game this early in the season will be a must-win, but I do think if you're the Cowboys, there is a sense of urgency based on what the Eagles did yesterday at Chicago, even though I think that was more about Chicago and Mitch Trubisky, but that's another question we'll get to in a moment, I assume. When it comes to Dallas, Dallas needs to find out who they are. Are they the team that came out 3-0? And, Will Kane is talking about Super Bowl, or are they the team that went, 0-3 and had you with the cowboy hat on, stomping around ESPN?
That's right.
I'm
going to get a horse, by the way. I'm going to get a horse one of these days and ride a horse in with the cowboy hat on. I'm going to do it, Boog. I'm going to do it.
Hey, man, if you get a horse and riding on TV, man, they're gonna kick us all off TV, man.
I'm going to do it.
Talking to the Cowboys last night, they seem to think that the Eagle game galvanized them. So they say if you put the best of both worlds, the first three and the second three, they believe the combination would be what you saw, a good performance against a better opponent in the Eagle game. Now, I want to see it because I think we all would agree that on paper tonight, the Cowboys should win handily. I don't know if we know that because other than Sterling Shepard, Daniel Jones is going to have a lot of weapons back. Saquon Barkley is as healthy as he's been since he had the high ankle sprain. And if the Giant defense can hold up and not give up big plays, we might have a ball game. But I do think that all the eyes are going to be on the Cowboys against an opponent that I think many feel like they should beat and maybe beat rather handily tonight.
How good are the Cowboys at this juncture in your estimation?
I think they are a team that has the potential to be the best team in football if you look at what they do. I think they have to play like they are a team that is lacking talent. And here's what I mean by that. When you get a team who knows they are really, really good, sometimes you feel like you can just roll the helmet out there and everybody sees the star and they're going to back down. Well, those are the teams that I think have to play the hardest. But you almost have to play as if you're missing pieces. You got to play like you don't have talent because you got to have that edge to you. And I think that's what Dallas needs to do. They need to get back to playing with that edge, especially defensively. And if they do that, I think they'll be fine.
Booger McFarland, let me transition and continue to transition when we go from the Dallas Cowboys to the Philadelphia Eagles. When you ask the question about who's the better team in the NFC East between those two, how do we answer that question? How do we reach a conclusion?
I just turn the tape on and I watch the Cowboys smash the Eagles. I mean, that's all we got to go off of right now. I mean, I look at the head-to-head, you know. We have this debate about, you know, resume and who you play. Well, sometimes teams play each other, and I saw with my own eyes a few weeks ago the Cowboys beat the Eagles. Now, they're going to get a chance to do it again, and that the outcome may change. But until then, I mean, that's what I'm going off of. Unless you're telling me that I should erase that from my memory. I still have a vivid picture of DeMarcus Lawrence creating havoc against the Eagles. I still have a vivid picture of Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper crushing that Eagles secondary. Like, I still have that picture, unless I'm imagining things, Stephen A.
How tough would the Philadelphia Eagles be if Deshaun Jackson were healthy?
Well, you would add another dynamic to their offense. And, you know, Carson Wentz likes to stretch the football down the field. And I think right now they're having trouble doing that. For whatever reason, the rapport between he and Nelson Aguilar has kind of just been a little bit off. Alshon Jeffrey has had a couple key drops, just like all the Eagle receivers have. Like Ertz, Goddard, Aguilar, Jeffrey, all those guys have had key drops. And so when you add Jackson back in the mix, I think you just add another element of another layer to the passing game, which is that deep down the field passing game.
If you were the Kansas City Chiefs, would you insert Patrick Mahomes back into the lineup this early?
You know, I saw Harrison Butker kick the field goal, and they won the game. And then I saw, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Patrick Mahomes run on the field and jump up and high-five Butker. I'm like, okay, I guess he feels pretty good, you know? So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, at some point they got to put him in there. I don't know when. I think there's going to be some hesitancy to put him in before the bye week, especially with that win. Now you got at Titans and at Chargers. So do you say this? I think you either put him in this week or you don't put him in until December the 1st. So in other words, if you put him in this week, he's going to play the next two games and get a bye week. If you sit him out against the Titans, then you almost have to sit him out against the Chargers and take advantage of the bye week. And so now he would have had, 5-6 weeks off. And so I think this is a key week because if he plays this week, then he's good. If he misses this week against the Titans, I think he's going to miss the Charger game and then the bye week also, and then he would be back December 1st.
You know what? Let me transition because I'm thinking about a couple of things before I want to let you get on out of here. And I'm thinking about the Cleveland Browns, 2-6 on the season with Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. Somehow, some way, they don't seem to know the rules. Can't even put on the right cleats. Got to change them at halftime. But that's neither here nor there. Then what do we have, Booger? We have a situation where we're looking at Freddie Kitchens, and you've got Odell Beckham Jr. in the game, one-on-one coverage against Chris Harris, open, and Baker Mayfield doesn't look at him. We look at the fact that he's only got one touchdown on the season, only got 100-plus yard games. And on top of it, he's only been targeted 4 times in the red zone. This, I don't even know how to explain it. How can you explain to Cleveland Browns fans everywhere what the hell is going on with this team right now?
Well, I think it's a team that is succumbing to expectations that were put on them by a lot of people that they started to believe.
How about themselves? They put it on themselves too. They were feeling the sauce and soaking it all up.
Well, that's the reason I said they started to believe, and they started to believe the hype. And, you know, there's a process of molding clay. You don't just walk in the store and you see the nice vase or the nice pot there. There's a process that got that pot there. And there's a process to winning in this league. And they're going through the growing pains of winning with the head coach who, if he has a conviction into what he is and who he wants to be, then he should stick to that. I think the problem is Freddie Kitchen may be doubting himself at this moment, and that's the worst thing. Because when you start doubting yourself, now your team sees that and your team doubts you. I just want them to understand and realize who they are, whatever they want their identity to be. Because right now, every single thing that they do, people are scrutinizing, and deservedly so. Because in this league, you don't call plays, you call players. When you need a play, you diagram a play to get your best player to football. And I think Freddie Kitchens right now, maybe he'll admit it, maybe not, but I think the organization is learning how to deal and handle expectations, because for years nobody expected anything. That's from media scrutiny to the level of post-game questioning to what you wear, like to all these different things. Nobody cared about the Browns. Now there's a level of relevancy, and we care about all those things. And now they don't seem to be able to handle that. So it's really, really tough. And I know Freddie's going through a tough time. Some of it, or most of it, he calls on his own self. So let's just see if he understands how to get out of this tough funk that they're in now.
Before I let you get on out of here, what do we say about Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers now? After an 0-3 start, they're now 4-4, second place in the AFC North, 2 games ahead of Cleveland, but 2 games behind Baltimore.
Mike Tomlin is who we thought he was, man, which is one of the better coaches that's ever been in this league, Stephen A. They were 0-3. You lose your starting quarterback. You lose Antonio Brown. You lose Le'Veon Bell. And now they're 4-4 with a home game against the Rams in that stadium to get to a game above 500 with a backup quarterback. They won a game with their third quarterback. I mean, you can't help but to give Mike Tomlin kudos, man. Nobody will, though, because people think that Mike Tomlin has underachieved. They think Mike Tomlin has done lesser. But you just go back and look at his resume and look at what he's done and who he's done it with, man. I think right now you can come up with different metrics, and most people tend to lean toward offensive guys. But I think when you look at accomplishments, it's Bill Belichick and then it's Mike Tomlin as the 2 best coaches based off of that in this league right now. And I think he's proven that right now this season, 0-3 to 4-4.
Booker McFarland, looking forward to listening to you and Joe Tessitore tonight when the Dallas Cowboys take on the New York Giants, man. Appreciate you, bro. We'll talk later.
Anytime, man.
All right. The one and only Booker McFarland, voice of Monday Night Football, right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 888-SAY. ESPN is always the number to call up. That's 888-729-3776. Back to your calls and more in a minute. Don't touch that dial. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way,